Happy Monday, everyone. I'm hoping that you've all come off of a great and wonderful weekend, and you're now super excited about this new week and all of the things that we have in store. Here at the Aha Moments, we're going to be talking about a very important topic, which is how to become a better person. And I can't think of a better and more meaningful topic than that. So today, I'm going to talk about when I decided I wanted to be a better person. I was really, really young when it happened. It was a specific moment, and I think it changed the direction of my life and ultimately led to me becoming a psychotherapist, an author, and all the things. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. So let me tell you a funny story. I grew up mostly anxious and super depressed because of the treatment I was receiving in my home from my father, primarily. So I struggled to find myself and find my identity throughout my youth. But there was a moment, it's going to sound really silly, but there was a movie that came out called Karate Kid, starring Ralph Macchio and Pat Morita. And I thought it was really cool. Like, the coolest guys that I'd ever seen in my life were the Cobra Kais. In that movie, the Cobra Kais were like the mean, evil dojo teaching mean, evil karate. And Ralph Macchio is the great, humble guy that beats them or whatever. But they were like the coolest guys that I had seen. And in my school, and I was in like the 5th grade when this happened. So this is really, really young. Like, I'm a young child at this point. There were these kids at my school that had t-shirts that looked like they were from the movie. They said Cobra on. I think they even said Cobra Kai, actually, to be honest. And they created a group, in Franklin, Massachusetts, where I was at the time. I wouldn't call it a gang, but it was like a clique, and they were like the cool kids in my little elementary school. The elementary school I went to, the 5th graders were the oldest grade in the school, and they were like the coolest kids in the school. And they had asked me to be a part of this group, and they gave me one of these t-shirts, and I was so excited. As a kid struggling with depression and acceptance issues because of all the stuff going on in my home, it was so cool that I was being accepted and people were pleased with me and they were going to bring me into the cool kid group. And then they told me I had to beat up this kid named Josh. We were all going to beat up Josh. Josh was another 15-year-old kid. His name was Josh Roop. And in order for me to be accepted by these guys, I had to do this really mean thing to Josh with them. So the time came. We were going to do it as we left for recess. Like, a lot of times when you go out to recess, the classroom is empty. And so one of them asked Josh to stay behind, and all the other kids went out to recess. And then, we start kind of beating and kicking this Josh kid. And he ends up on the ground. Now, I did not throw a single punch or throw a single kick. I'll never forget this. But I was holding an eraser at the time. So when Josh was laying on the ground, I was holding this kind of like rectangular eraser that they used to give us. And I threw it at Josh and I hit him. And at that point, he started to cry. I remember he looked at me and started to cry. And I went home after that school day feeling horrible about myself and feeling horrible about what I had done and feeling horrible about what I had allowed myself to become. I was in 5th grade. I was 8, 9 years old, but I just felt horrible. And I decided I'm going to give this t-shirt back. I'm going to decide not to become one of the Cobra Kais at my school. I'm going to choose not to be in the cool kid clique because I didn't like the way that felt. And in that moment, I realized, I want to be someone who does good and makes people feel good. And, I didn't get to sit at the cool kid table until middle school. And then I, became athletic and really cool. But I got bullied. I didn't get cute 5th grade girl or that sort of thing. But it definitely put me on a path to realizing, I don't want to be mean, a bully. I don't want to be someone that puts somebody down. I want to be somebody that uplifts people and make people feel good. Now, of course, as a 5th grader, I wasn't thinking about making this a career or making this a living or becoming a psychotherapist or any of that stuff. I just wanted to be the kind of person that did good in the world. I just wanted to be the kind of person that made a positive difference in the lives of the people around me. And I really think, if I look back on when did I decide the kind of person I wanted to be and what was the first micro step towards a world where I would be a helping professional, I think it was throwing that eraser at Josh Roop in the 5th grade. And making the decision that I did not want to be like that anymore. I had to reflect on my behavior and make a really hard choice. And that was the first really hard choice I can remember making. That was the first sacrifice that I can remember making, and it changed my life and got me on the path of realizing it feels good to make people feel good and it feels bad to make people feel bad. So I just want to feel good and I want to make people feel good. That was my first step towards becoming a better person. And I want you to reflect on your life and your journey. How did you first learn that you wanted to be a better person and take steps and strides towards becoming a better person? Like, what was that process like for you? What were those steps like for you? What was that? I mean, I just shared with you what it was for me, and I wonder what it was like for you. And I just want you to think about it and feel free to share in the comments of this podcast or send me a message. You can even text me at 972-426-2640. But I definitely want you to spend some time thinking about your process of becoming a better person. Thank you for listening today. I love you guys so much for spending time with me. Please share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast if you haven't done so already. You can do that wherever it is you enjoy listening to podcasts, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Simplecast, Google, anywhere you enjoy listening to podcasts. You can also become a Patreon subscriber and get access to bonus material each and every week. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. The journey of self-improvement can be a difficult one, because a lot of times we don't want to admit that our flaws have impacted our lives. And in fact, sometimes we don't want to admit that we have flaws. But you have to work on becoming a better person. And today I'm going to talk about specific ways for you to do that and how to notice signs that you need to work on becoming a better person. So welcome back to the aha moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. I'm your host, Elliott Connie. So let's talk about becoming a better person and how important it is. The very first sign that you should have to let you know that you need to become a better person in your life is that if you're breathing. Look, none of us are perfect. We are all a work in progress. We are all struggling with something in some sort of way, and we have to keep growing and pushing and working to become our best selves. It's the only way forward in this life. I saw a client earlier today, and she was really struggling in life. And she walked into the therapy session thinking like there was some really big major problem with her. And she talked about like depression and anxiety and these things. But the truth is, she wasn't living life in a way that's congruent to her values and morals. Like, she wasn't dedicated. Her life wasn't what it was designed to become, because she wasn't doing what was rightest for her. And through that conversation, she started talking about wanting to be a better person, not like going from bad to good, but going from out of alignment to within alignment. And what I mean by that, like, there's a cool story. I don't remember the guy's name. It was Joseph something. I can't remember his name. But he was a CEO of a major company, millions upon millions of dollars, and wasn't happy. Just wasn't happy in his life. And his wife asked him, "We have all of these great, wonderful things, but we don't have happiness. What would it take for you to become happy?" And he said, "I've always wanted to be a football coach." And he quit his job as the CEO of whatever company that paid him, I think it was $40 million a year. You can look it up. And became a volunteer assistant football coach at the University of Nebraska. So it's not like he was bad to good. It was like, the way to improve your life was getting into alignment. And I think that's usually the number one way that people can improve themselves, is to work on living life in a way that is in alignment with who they want to be. Sometimes we step outside of that, and sometimes we struggle to do that. So look, if you're breathing, this is something that you need to do. Another sign is if you're hurting, if something is off, you have to do something to rectify that. You have to do something to remedy that. And it doesn't have to be as drastic as leaving a CEO job and becoming a football coach, but you have to do something. You have to do something to put your life back in a place of balance. And I think too often we make decisions for reasons that are not always going to lead to our best selves. Like, I want to make more money, or I want to live in this city, or I'm only doing this because I want that partner or that superficial success. But the truth is, you have to be your best self and make decisions that are totally in alignment with being your best self if you're going to be successful. And I'm serious. I mean, it sounds like a joke, and I'm like, if you're breathing, you need to do this. And if you find yourself hurting, stressed, or anxious, there's probably some work you have to do internally on yourself to make your life better. In order to have happiness, I have to have the things in my life that bring about happiness. It's really that simple. And for some people, happy is like my uncle, he loved his job of driving trucks across the United States. He was my favorite human being, and that's what he loved to do. It provided a sense of freedom to him. And other people, happiness is surrounded by a bunch of people working in an office. I had an assistant one time. She was working remotely for me before the pandemic when everybody was remote. And she resigned after about a month because it was too stressful for her not to be around people. So improving yourself often means being yourself and working on becoming more of yourself. So do the things that put you in alignment. Think about what makes you your best self and do the things that bring that about in your life. Thank you so much for being here today. Please share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe. You can do that wherever it is you enjoy listening to podcasts. Apple, Google, Spotify, Simplecast, anywhere. And also become a Patreon subscriber where we have bonus content every single week. Love you guys. See you tomorrow. So I'm going to be honest. I'm not much of a checklist maker. I often feel constrained by them. I often feel limited by them. And it's just not part of my personality, what I do. However, I do have a routine that helps my mental health, helps my productivity, and helps me be the kind of person that I want to be. And since this week we're talking about how to be a better person, I'm going to talk to you about how to do the things consistently that you need to do to keep you showing up in life in a way that matters to you. So welcome back to the aha moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. And I want to tell you something really, really cool. So as I record this episode of this podcast, I'm in Los Angeles, and I'm working on some projects out here in LA and having some meetings. And yesterday I met an executive. I'd actually met her before, but I hung out with this executive in this really cool place in LA, and I got to meet her son. And her son is this really cool guy, mid-teenage, 15, 16, 14-year-old, somewhere in there. And he's a brilliant musician. And we get to talking, and he had looked at some of my YouTube stuff, and he had looked at some of my material, and he was like, he and his mom were asking me if I could give any advice to a kid his age, what would my advice be? And what I said was, well, number one, I don't have advice for like 16-year-olds generally, but for this specific 16-year-old who is a brilliant musician, music is in his bones. He's been playing music his entire life. His mom said, like, at a very young age, when she was kind of like, where did you get this from? He was playing music. And my advice is protect that talent. Build a routine around that skill set, because it is part of what makes you you. It is part of what makes your mental health strong. It is part of what builds you up. And the world is going to try to distract you from that talent. Like, as you grow up, someone's going to tell you, you can't make money doing that. You need to get a real career. You need to become an architect or a math teacher or a nurse or a doctor or whatever. But the truth is, your mental health is going to depend upon you using that skill. So as I started off by saying, like, I don't have a checklist of things that I do. That's just not my way. But words have always mattered to me. As a young child, I was always a writer. I was a journal taker. I would stay up in the middle of the night and I would write in a journal that I would hide away. I didn't want my brothers or parents to find. And I've always kept writing as a part of my day. So to this very day, writing is part of what I do because it matters to me and keeps me mentally healthy. As I work as a psychotherapist, like, I really don't know that most problems are internal to the person. Like, we say a lot of things like, that person has depression, that person has anxiety, as if it's like a part of them. But what I have come to learn in the human experience is oftentimes what they have is a distraction from who they really are. And I was explaining to this kid, you need to protect your gift of playing music. You need to make sure that, even if you decide to go and pursue a career like being a math teacher or a nurse or a doctor or an architect or whatever, make sure on the weekends you play music. Make sure while you're working you play music. Make sure you occasionally write music. Make sure you occasionally go out into the community and play music, because that is what makes you talented. I talk to my employees this way. Like, my employees, I have some of the most creative human beings ever working for my company. There's a woman named Helen, and she runs my branding, and there's someone under her named Alicia, and we work with a video guy named Dennis. It is very important to me that they do a really good job as they work for my company. And part of that is for me to make sure that they have the time and space to be creative and use that creativity in non-work related ways if they choose, because that's what made them them. If I took these creative people and I just bogged them down with professional work and I stuck them in a cubicle, they would develop the kind of problems that we are familiar with: anxiety, depression, so on and so on. So the key to being a better person is understanding who you are as a person and having a way in your life to facilitate that talent. And in some cases, you have to absolutely protect it. That's the message I want you guys to have today. So I want you to spend a minute thinking about who you are as a person and what your talents are and what you can do to make sure you are always utilizing those talents, even if you have to work damn hard to protect them. Thank you so much for being here today and for listening to this podcast. Please share this podcast on your social media platforms. I want to continue to reach as many people as possible, and I cannot do that without your help. So please share it on your social media platforms, or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe. You can do that wherever it is you enjoy listening to podcasts: Apple, Google, Spotify, Simplecast, wherever that is. And you can also become one of my Patreon subscribers and get bonus content every single week. Love you. See you tomorrow. I had such a crazy experience last night. So I'm in LA doing some work, taking some meetings, working on a project, and I went to an event and I met some really amazing, talented people. One of them was in a Marvel movie, and I'm going to talk about that experience last night and what it has to do with our topic this week of how to be a better person. So welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. So here's what happened. I'm out here in LA and I'm taking some meetings and doing some things, and I got invited to an event, and I walk into the event and it's like a premiere event for a movie coming up. There's all these celebrities around, and one of them was a woman named Awkwafina. I'm a big fan of Awkwafina. I like her comedy. I like her acting. She's been in several movies that I like. She's been in a movie called Jumanji, like the newer Jumanji with Kevin Hart and The Rock. She was in, what else was she in? Ocean's 8. And I like that movie. I like the Ocean's 11, 12, 13 series. They did an all-female cast, Ocean's 8, and she was in that. But what takes it to the next level is Awkwafina was in Shang-Chi, the Marvel movie. And if you know anything about me, I love all things Marvel. And it was so cool to meet her and have a chat with her, and she took a picture with me and all the amazing things. And it made me think about one of the biggest examples of becoming a better person that I can think of, that most of us are aware of. And it's another Marvel character, or another Marvel actor, Robert Downey Jr. When I grew up, or when I was growing up, I should say, Robert Downey Jr. was like an up-and-coming actor of wild success. He was a teenage heartthrob phenom in every movie imaginable. But by the time he hit his 20s and maybe even 30s, he had hit some really, really hard personal times. He was addicted to drugs and alcohol. It seemed like every time I turned on the television, he was being arrested for something. There was a prominent story. I mean, he was always in the news in court wearing an orange jumpsuit. And then there was this prominent story. He was out partying all night in LA, and he came home in the early morning hours after partying all night, and he went into the wrong house and went into somebody's bedroom and climbed into their bed and went to sleep, this complete and total stranger woke up to find Robert Downey Jr. sleeping in one of their bedrooms and called the police, and he gets arrested and all of the things. And it's really tempting to treat people like this is just who you are. Like, it's really tempting to treat people like this is what you do, this is who you are, as if it's like some sort of definitive, finite thing. But the human journey is beautiful. The human journey includes healing. The human journey is truly remarkable. And Robert Downey Jr. went on a remarkable journey to get himself clean and sober. Now, I don't know Robert Downey Jr. I don't know him personally, never met him. He's not a friend, anything like that. But what I do know is we don't see him in the news being arrested all the time. What I do know is he turned his life around just from a sobriety standpoint. And if I met him tomorrow, I wouldn't ask him about being rich and famous and all that kind of stuff. I'd want to ask him, how'd you do that? How did you change your life to the point where you're no longer in the news, literally daily or weekly even, getting into trouble? How did you go about that journey and become the person you have become today, which makes you available to do something like star in Marvel movies as Iron Man? That, to me, is what life is about. And I think it has two lessons. Number one, never treat yourself as if your problems are finite. Two, never treat someone else as if their problems are finite. Because anyone who's willing to do the work, put in the effort, can become a better version of themselves. So I want you to think about, what stories have you heard, read, or watched that show you someone else's journey of becoming a better person? I think one of the things that's so available to us in this 2022 world that we live in is we have access to details about people's lives in a way that we never have before. And in some cases, I think that's very bad and tragic and not good. But in other cases, I think it at least gives us wonderful opportunity for inspiration. So what are some stories that inspire you as you watch people go on their journey towards becoming a better person? Thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate you took the time to listen to this podcast. I really, really appreciate you helping share the word of this podcast. So please share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And do not forget that you can subscribe to this podcast wherever it is you enjoy listening. Apple, Spotify, Simplecast, Google, wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. And become one of my Patreon subscribers and get weekly bonus content. That would mean the world to me. I love you guys. See you tomorrow. Becoming a better person is a lifetime journey. I'm going to tell you the person that put me on that journey and share the lessons I learned and how I learned those lessons in the hopes that you will be inspired to be the best version of you as well. Welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day we share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Of course, I'm your host, Elliott Connie, and the person I'm talking about is my mother. To this day, my mother is the best person that I know. I've never seen my mother drink alcohol, never heard her curse. I've never heard her insult someone. These are all true. It sounds like I'm exaggerating or being hyperbolic, but it is true. I've never seen her hurt anyone, drink alcohol, smoke a cigarette, use a curse word. I've never heard her listen to inappropriate music. I've never seen her watch anything on television or an inappropriate movie. My mom is the best person that I know. And the first way my mother inspired me is as a young child, I watched the way my father treated her, and I never saw her react in a way that was guided by anger or resentment or any other negative emotion. My mother was strong enough to be kind and dignified in all situations. But probably the biggest moment in my life that I can remember was one day my brothers and I were fighting and arguing and, doing the things that kids do. Not bad. It wasn't like a knockdown, drag-out fight, but it was literally just, three boys living in the same house kind of getting on each other's nerves. And one of the things that we were fighting about is my mother had asked us to clean the bathroom. Never forget, it's such a stupid chore, but clean the bathroom. And we began arguing over which one was supposed to do it. I noticed that my mom was not coming into the room to break up the argument in the way she typically would. My mother would often come into the room, you kids be quiet. Elliott, you do the chore, or Adam, you do the chore, or Isaac, you do the chore, whichever one it was. But this time my mother didn't come running in to the bedroom, and I went looking around, and I found my mom sitting on the bathroom toilet in tears. She was just sitting on the toilet crying. I asked what was wrong, and she talked about how stressed she was and how frustrated she was just in life, like not with her kids or anything, but just, she was just having a difficult time, and all she had asked was for us to do this chore. And we were like, my older brother was probably 11, I was probably 8 or 9, and my younger brother was probably 6 or 7, somewhere in that ballpark. And I remember, that was the day I learned compassion. That was the day I learned that part of what people do who are good people is they behave in compassionate ways. So on some level, it doesn't matter whether or not it's my brother's turn to do the chore, or whether or not I got asked last time, or whether I wanted to do the chore or not. Good, kind people do things because it's the right thing to do. My mother deserved to have us do the right thing. My mother deserved to have someone do something purely out of care. And as a little 9-year-old kid, I asked my mom, I said, Mom, you can leave the bathroom, I'll clean it. And my mom stood up. And it wasn't common for me to see my mother cry. In fact, it was quite rare. But that was the day I realized, you have to kind of get out of your own head and do things for other people. And that's part of the act of being a kind, good-natured person. I never refused to do a chore after that. Because every time my mom asked me to do a chore, I realized she was just, as a single mom raising 3 boys, she was just asking me to help. She was just asking me to help her. She wasn't asking me to do chores as a punishment. She wasn't asking me to do chores because it's fun for her. She was asking me to do chores and my brothers to do chores because it was just too much for one woman to do. That was an important lesson for me to learn, and I think it's how I started learning things like compassion and kindness. And I still, as an adult, I don't do it perfectly, but it is a lesson I carry with me to this day, and I hope you carry it with you as well now that you've heard it. And I want to encourage you to take a minute to think about, when did you first learn that you needed to start doing things differently or in a little bit of a different way to kind of be in line with being a good person? I think stopping and reflecting on those things can only have a positive impact on us. So thank you so much for being here. I love you guys so much for listening to my message. Please share it on your social media platforms so we can continue to reach as many people as possible, or even share it with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message. I'd really, really appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe. You can do that wherever it is you enjoy listening to your podcasts: Apple, Simplecast, Google, Spotify, anywhere, any of those places. And become one of my Patreon subscribers and get extra bonus content every single week. I look forward to seeing you next time, which is Monday. So see you on Monday. Love you.